Alcatraz. Better known for the infamous penitentiary, it's an important nesting site for seabirds. Native Americans used to keep away from the island of Alcatraz as they believed it was cursed, but when the Spanish lieutenant Juan Manuel de Ayala charted the San Francisco Bay in 1775, he saw only an island with a large population of pelicans and called it La Isla de los Alcatrazes, meaning Island of the Pelicans. The name was eventually anglicized to Alcatraz, as used today. After California transferred from Mexican to U.S. authority, the American Army studied Alcatraz Island for the positioning of coastal batteries to protect approaches to San Francisco Bay. As a result, the Army began fortifying the island in 1853, resulting in the fortress of Alcatraz. The following year, the first lighthouse on the west coast of the United States started to operate there. However, that small beacon was later replaced by another, which was newer and taller. Because of the island's isolation, in 1861, Alcatraz was used to house Civil War prisoners and Native Americans who had land disagreements with the federal government, and around 7 years later, it was officially designated a long-term detention facility for military prisoners. Over the following years, new cell blocks were constructed, and the United States Department of Justice acquired the Alcatraz barracks, turning the island into a federal prison in 1934. During the 29 years it was in use, the prison held some of the worst criminals America had ever known. They were not necessarily those who had committed the most violent crimes, but they were the most incorrigible prisoners in the federal penal system, in need of an attitude adjustment. One of the most famous inmates of Alcatraz was the notorious Al Capone. This gangster and mob boss was one of the first prisoners to occupy the federal prison, after he was transferred from Atlanta prison, where he bribed the guards in exchange for preferential treatment. By the end of his sentence here, he had become so cooperative that he was permitted to play banjo in the Alcatraz band that gave regular concerts on Sundays for the other inmates. Because the penitentiary cost much more to operate than other prisons, and the salt water had severely eroded the buildings, it was closed in March of 1963. A few years later, Alcatraz became the birthplace of the Native American Red Power movement. They claimed the island by right of discovery, as indigenous peoples knew of it for thousands of years before the Europeans came to North America. They occupied the island for 2 years, until President Nixon rescinded the Indian termination policy designed by previous administrations to end federal recognition of tribes. Before the Native Americans, and long before any humans set foot on the island, Alcatraz was already home to thousands of nesting birds. Today, it is a sanctuary for seabirds, such as cormorants and pigeon guillemots, and for water birds like snowy egrets, black-crowned night herons, and gulls. Despite the federal prison being the most known site of Alcatraz due to Hollywood movies, it is a premier spot for viewing colonial nesting seabirds and a place of diverse interest.